Hello and welcome to another episode of the Winging It podcast. This time it's not Formula One, it's Formula E, which is much better, some people might think, apart from Adam Dickinson, but he's not here. Instead, we've got Joe Ellis, who's my colleague at the Checkered Flag. He's also writing for the GB Speedway team. It's great to have him on. And we've also got Freddie Coates, who's very excited ahead of the Formula E season, which restarts on Wednesday. 2 races on Wednesday and Thursday, then Saturday and Sunday, then next Wednesday and next Thursday. So basically every day at 6 o'clock UK time. So yeah, they're going to be racing in Berlin. They're going to use 3 different track layouts, 2 races on each layout, for those who didn't know. Freddie, do you think this is the right idea? Because they could have raced at permanent tracks, but they decided to do it this way. What do you think about that?
I think it is the right idea. They're sticking to what Formula E is. They're going to a track they're contracted to have a race anyway, which is going to probably save them a lot of legal trouble anyway as well in the small print. But that's not the exciting part. The exciting part is that they can have 3 track layouts and stay as a residency at the same place, which as a closed door COVID precaution is fantastic. We've seen Formula One has been doing that. They've stayed at Austria for 2 races, staying at Silverstone for 2 races. So it's clearly a much better feasible idea for them to stay in the same place, and they're able to do it in Berlin with more possibilities there. I think it's great. And the Berlin original layout is brilliant in its own right, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Joe, do you think that's the right idea as well, or should Formula E have maybe used the chance to race on permanent tracks?
No, I think it's the right decision to stay there. The great beauty of the Tempelhof Airport is it's an airport. There's no distinct road layout that they have to follow. They can do whatever they like. They could have the whole runway as a straight if they wanted to. But yeah, these 6 races. The only thing I'm worried about is the fatigue of drivers and teams with 6 races in such a short space of time. It could really take its toll, certainly towards the back end.
Yeah, and the championship is still wide open, even though Antonio Felix da Costa leads the way over Mitch Evans. How many drivers, Freddie, do you think are still in championship contention with 6 races left to go?
Well, I think definitely the top sort of 7 or 8, all definitely, you'd look at them with a bit more favouritism. But I think the majority of the drivers in the top 10 are going to be, because Sam Bird and Sebastian Buemi are down 10th and 11th, I think, in the standings. They're not ones to count out. So I think the majority of drivers on the field are going to be trying to go for the title, and they still can. There's still over half the season to go. I mean, we're thinking of it as a big conclusion, but that's just because it's a finale race after finale race after finale race. It's brilliant, and I think it's going to be hard to really talk about a championship tilt for most drivers until the last 2 races, but then they'll suddenly put themselves into contention. Degrassi, when he won his season, he was 22 points away from Buemi when they went into Montreal, and they had a double header there, and then he won the championship. So there can be swings and roundabouts in Formula E, and I think there will be.
Yeah, and Joe, Formula E isn't like Formula 1 where Mercedes clearly have the best car. Formula E, the field is much closer. Do you think there's a team or car or driver that has an advantage over the rest of the field, or maybe 2 or 3 drivers?
I don't know if it's enough an advantage to be as far ahead as Mercedes are in F1. As you say, you're not going to see a driver go and win by 20 odd seconds unless you're Mitch Evans in Mexico. But I think you're looking at Techeetah with their certainly driver lineup pre-season. They were billed as the team to beat, and Antonio Felix da Costa, your championship leader, had John-Eric Vernon had perhaps more luck in the first few races. I think they'd be well clear. But you can't look past the German contingent of Porsche, Mercedes, BMW. They might not be the quickest now, but if you give them enough time and they've got the resources, they could become dominant in the years to come.
Yeah, and Freddie, do you think there's a team that is out there who's better? Because I think for me, BMW or Techeetah just about have a small advantage if they can get everything together over the weekend.
Yeah, I think you're right. BMW, Techeetah, and I think Jaguar, you can throw them in there as well, definitely with Mitch Evans. They've been they've all of those teams have won races, and they've all put in very good showing across the season. Mitch Evans, I think, and Antonio Felix da Costa, they're obviously 1 and 2 in the championship, so they know what they're doing really. And I think BMW, I think, have been the sort of fastest car out of the blocks this year. They were fast in testing, and Alex Sims became the first driver to get 3 pole positions, if you count New York as well, in Formula E history in a row. And I think BMW are ones to watch, definitely, because I think people, they're quietly 3rd and 4th in the championship, Sims and Gunter. So I think they're definitely going to be well in the fight.
The Berlin track, in previous years, it suited Audi and Lucas di Grassi. I think he's won there on a few occasions. He got disqualified one year, but ultimately he still crossed the line first. How do you rate di Grassi's chances? He's one of the most he is the most experienced driver on the grid, along with, I think, Bird and Buemi and a few others. Do you think the racing at Berlin is going to give them a lifeline, because Audi haven't been quite as strong as other teams this year? Joe?
I don't know if it's an Audi thing or if it's perhaps a German team thing. I know Audi raised their game in front of their home crowd, and when it was a couple of years ago, Daniel Abt destroyed the field at Berlin. He seemed to just really, really enjoy it, and it was actually him racing as well, not someone else he drafted in.
We'll get on to that.
So I think Audi will be strong, but I don't think they'll be as strong as they have been in previous years. I can still see it being incredibly close with 5 or 6 teams, 10 or so drivers, not much to separate them at all.
Di Grassi's not out of it. Di Grassi's not out of it. He's 5th in the championship still. I mean, he's one you can never discount ever, I think, with Di Grassi. He's such a wily operator. He knows what he's doing, and he can get into people's heads. And you can see with what he's been saying recently is that he's really playing the team game with Rene Rast, and he's getting him on side. He said in an interview in a press conference the other day that already he thinks Rast is one of the best assets to the team, that kind of thing, that he's the most data-hungry driver he's ever seen. He's come in, he's really changed the team, and he's helped. And he said that with Rene Rast sat, on the same Zoom call as him. So he knows what he's doing, and he knows how to operate, does Di Grassi. And I think he's one who is always going to be in the hunt till the end.
I think Rene Rast, as you touched on, he's a great driver. Ever since he was in Porsche Supercup, I think in 2011, 2012, he dominated that series, then moved on to GT racing with Audi. So it'll be really interesting to see if he can get up to speed quickly in Formula E. He is replacing Daniel Abt, who has changed teams. If you don't know, Daniel Abt was forced to leave Audi because he basically cheated, kind of, by using, he took part in the Formula E sim race, but it wasn't him. So then Audi didn't really like it, and then they booted him. So, what do you think that was the right decision from Audi?
I think so. I think it's not necessarily the competition. I don't think Audi would have bothered if they would have won that or not. I think it was the honesty of it more than anything. I don't think Daniel Abt's life would change if he'd have come last in an E race, if compared to first. I'm not really sure what the thinking was behind it. Was it his brand that he wanted to increase, making everyone think that he was an amazing sim racer? I don't know what the thinking behind it, but he's very lucky the fact that Martin Guar can't travel to race here, and he's got a second chance, albeit in, let's be honest, the worst car on the grid. But he has got the chance to sort of mend some of the bridges that he burnt over the off season.
You say mend the bridges, but he just put on his Instagram story him walking past the Audi garage playing Guess Who's Back Again on his Instagram story, and just laughing about it. So I mean, I think he's a little bit sour, obviously. He was just doing it as a bit of fun. It was a bit of a misunderstanding for the seriousness that some people were taking the Race at Home challenge. And he was going for his YouTube with the sim racer, and he gave the sim racer, who had been doing pretty well in the sim racing Race at Home challenge, he gave them the opportunity to race against real Formula E drivers, which is nice, but obviously wasn't the impetus for the series. And Audi want to be squeaky clean and honesty at the moment. They don't want to have anything going against them. They've had previous emission scandals and stuff in the past, so they want to be clean slate. And I mean, some people have said it's an excuse to get rid of.
That's what I was going to say. I think it was. I think it just speeded up the process because he's been okay, hasn't he, in Formula E? But I am surprised he's kept his seat at Audi for this long, to be honest. So.
You say that, but the team name is Audi Sport Abt Schaeffler. His surname's in the team name. It's it's like you wouldn't see. I doubt Lance Stroll's going to be dropped for over Sergio Perez if there's a state seat Velvet Racing Point. The team ownership is a large part of why he's still there, and he's not been terrible, but he's been nowhere near Degrassi's level for the 5 years they've been together.
It wasn't even a Works Audi team for season 1 and 2. It was just Team Abt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. We've got lots of driver changes. I can't remember them. Freddie, can you talk us through who's changed teams? Because I can't. I haven't done my research.
This is going to be a monologue of the ages. So we've spoken about the Abt controversy. So if you start there, Abt is out. The replacement being DTM reigning champion René Rast, who won yesterday in Spa, actually, for the opening DTM weekend there. That's pretty good for him. And then the next big bombshell move, which was reported by The Race, was that Pascal Wehrlein has ended his contract early with Mahindra. He was due to stay there for 2021 as well, but he asked to leave, and the expected reasons that he's going to go to Porsche for season 7, replacing Neil Jarni, who is going to finish the season at Porsche here. So Pascal Wehrlein will not be on the grid in Berlin for any of the races. So that's his season 6 kaput. And the driver brought in to replace Pascal Wehrlein was Alex Lynn, who never seems to get a full Formula E season because he came in after round 5 last year to replace Nelson Piquet Jr. So Alex Lynn is now here with a hell of a chance to get his name back in there because he was just a reserve driver for Jaguar. And then moving on to Jaguar, Sam Bird has announced that he's leaving Virgin, who he's been with since race 1, season 1. He's leaving them and is going to move to Jaguar to partner Mitch Evans in season 7, which will be a mega lineup. Definitely one of the best lineups in Formula E history, I think, that with the form Evans is in, the form Jaguar is in, and the form Bird is always in, is going to be just ridiculous. I don't know what anyone else is going to do. So that's good. Collado looks like he's out of a seat then. There's a lot.
Collado's missing the last 2 races, isn't he? I believe.
He's missing all of them, I believe.
Oh, is he missing all of them?
Tom Blomqvist, what it says on here that I've got, Tom Blomqvist will be replacing Collado for
That's right.
the Berlin rounds.
I only heard it was the last 2 rounds because I thought it was something to do with the WEC round at Spa. But Buemi, I think, is still taking part. But that's because Hartley is now left Dragon. So Hartley can go and do the practice stuff.
It's too much. I'm getting confused.
At Spa, Buemi can stay at Nissan for those rounds, and then we'll go from FP3 at Spa and WEC. And I think you're right with Blomqvist. All I've seen is that he's been officially announced as a reserve driver, but I've seen headlines saying that he will be replacing Collado for some of it. I don't know if it's all of it. That will be a bit sad for Collado. He hasn't really had a chance to show himself, I think, in Formula E. But anyway, he's out. Hartley has had a breakdown of relationship with Penske Dragon, and they've called up Sergio Sette Camara, who was former McLaren reserve driver, is a Red Bull reserve driver in their junior program now, is going to be competing with them in his Formula E debut. And we said Daniel Abt is going to NIO to replace Ma Xinghua, who doesn't feel like it's safe for him to travel from China to Germany, and a lot of the Chinese contingent of NIO are going to be based in China as well. So it's going to be an operation Neo across continents, really.
And I think the reason all of this is happening is because of the contracts ending at the end of June and stuff, so then drivers can move. So this isn't normal if you're new to Formula E. This is just a one-off thing, hopefully. But there are a lot of driver changes. Out of those new or returning drivers, who do you think will perform the best, Joe?
I think Alex Lynn, having had the experience, is probably going to be the quickest out of the block of those 4 or 5 just mentioned. But I'm quite excited to see how Sergio Sette Camara does, because last year in Formula 2 he was really good alongside Latifi. I thought he was going to make a move towards IndyCar in North America, but that didn't happen, and he's been out of a drive ever since. Really, he's not had a great deal of racing, although you could argue no one has with the situation. But I think he might raise a few eyebrows, and potentially, early prediction, I think he might push Superpole.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've got the perfect opportunity, don't they, with the group qualifying? In Camera Rast will be right there, just no points, straight for it.
Yeah.
Well, the last time I saw Rast race was in a DTM last year, I think. And he was upside down at the Lausitz ring, so I hope he... yeah, I've never seen a touring car driver say they're okay through the roof of their car before. That's exactly what I thought. But hopefully it goes better for him this week.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's good as Rast.
Yeah, how well do you think Rast can do, Freddie?
I think he can do really well. He's obviously there as a number 2 to Giovinazzi for this bit of the year. For next season, I reckon he'll be able to come in and just be fantastic. All these rookies, they've got sort of the best opportunity to be a rookie, which is you've got the pressure, obviously, of such a weird situation with the closed event, but you've got 6 races in 9 days. That's going to be, I've made this small mistake in race 1. I can iron that out immediately tomorrow. And then, okay, I've got this little trick now in the car. Then you can go in and go in and go in. And rather than having like consistent simulator performance, you're having consistent race performance to raise your game. And by the end of this season, I think these 3 rookies won't really be rookies. They'll just be, they'll be solid Formula E drivers. And I wouldn't be, maybe if one of them gets a podium, I wouldn't be surprised if it's next week.
That's interesting. Do you think, so you talked about how the drivers, they're going to get up to speed quite quickly, even though we've had a long break. What are the other factors that will be important for the championship contenders? Because with 6 races, do you think it will be about who makes the least amount of mistakes and they will go on to win the title? Joe?
The thing is, the top 2 in the title chase are quite, in Formula E terms, quite far away. I mean, it's only 10 points between second and third, which might not sound a great deal, but it's usually 1 point between 5 in Formula E a lot of the time. I think it's going to mainly be, certainly to start with, just accumulating points. It's not, with so many races in a short space of time, don't wreck your car on the first race. Don't give your mechanics a lot of work to do when it might not necessarily be needed, let's say. So I think whoever can get enough consistency and, of course, speed as well. Martin Gar was consistent, but he was consistently last, so it didn't really matter. Whoever can keep themselves at the front for as long as possible will come away as champion.
Freddie?
Yeah. I think Joe touched on it at the beginning of the podcast. The fatigue for the drivers and the teams is going to be ridiculous. I mean, some people would have been comparing it to something like Le Mans, but Le Mans is at least over after 24 hours. This is just race after race after race. You've got to be on it. They're sprint races as well, so you've got to be on it for 45 minutes every day, pretty much, and a lap. And that's just going to be really hard for all the drivers and the teams to focus, and the cars. The batteries are going to be normally have 3 or 4 weeks off between the races, and it's just one day, maybe a double header like you would have in scheduled for this year in London and you had in Saudi Arabia. But this is going to be 3 double headers, back-to-back double headers, and the cars are going to be, if going to be really, really difficult, I think, to look after for that length of time.
Yeah, I think reliability will be key. Yeah, go on, Joe.
I wonder if the time of the day of the race as well might make a difference. I don't think Formula E have ever raced at, it'll be 7 p.m, I believe, local time. When the race, I don't know if they've raced that late before, whether that might have an effect with a setting sun perhaps causing some visual problems.
I mean, it's still August in the middle of Europe, so I reckon it won't have too many issues.
You'd hope not.
And it's quite an open area in the middle of an apron of an old airfield, I think.
Yeah, the track is quite a brutal track on the cars, and well, on the tyres, because it's very abrasive. So we could see tyre wear, which is something we don't normally see in Formula E. And with it being in August, and track temperatures are going to be above 30, you'd think. So reliability could be a key part. And if if say Mitch Evans is leading the race, but then has a problem and loses 25 points, that could be the difference between winning and losing the championship. Shall we? Yeah, I was going to save this for the end of the podcast, but since we're talking about the championship contenders, shall we have a go at saying who's going to be champion after the 6 races? Ready?
Mitch Evans.
Mitch Evans. Joe?
I'm going to back BMW and Max Gunter.
Good choice.
That's what I was going to say.
Really? Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's a good choice.
I'm going to go with Giovinazzi.
Yeah.
Let's all ignore the person who's
leading the championship.
No, yeah. It's just...
that's Jeff's team.
Weird.
It is.
Yeah. Onward, he is the defending champion, 2-time champion. He's had some bad luck. Do you think the break will have helped him? And how do you think will he be forced to play a number 2 role for Antonio?
I think Santiago made it kind of look like that there wasn't so much of a team game from Jeff's perspective. You could see he had tapped the wall somewhere, and the front bodywork of his car was essentially hanging off, and then his steering and suspension was getting issues from that. But he was still defending from Da Costa, who, if he had got past Jev a lap or 2 earlier, probably would have won that race. Because I think Gunter passed him pretty much right at the end to take his first win. So I think because of the teamwork there, I think it lends itself to me that it's kind of like it's still Jev's team. I think he has a stake in it somewhere. And I think that if there's a chance to back Jev, the team will try and still to back Jev. He's the 2-time champion for the team. And that would have been made clear, I think, to Da Costa on the signing. But then Da Costa is that far ahead in the championship that depending, I think you say it's going to be about collecting points, but I think for Da Costa, it's going to be about really cementing it so that he can get the team behind him for the first few races. Otherwise, I think it's going to be fair game between the DS to cheated drivers.
I think that could be a problem for some teams. Say Lucas Di Grassi, he's got René Rast, who, if he has the pace, he could help him, by backing the pack up or, causing trouble for other teams. Whereas BMW with Sims and Gunter, because they're both possibly going for the championship, they can't really use team orders. So the number 2 driver, if there is a number 2 driver in the team, could play a huge factor, I think. So, yeah.
And that's why I'm backing Mitch Evans.
I don't know what to say now.
Well, on Eric Verne, he said the break might have been good with 2 retirements at the start of the season, but his last 2 results were a 4th and a 3rd. He was starting to get some momentum. It's not a victory that we expect from Jev, but he was starting to get momentum, and he's 36 points behind his teammate now. The first few races, it will still be your equal drivers, you race against each other. But if Jev doesn't get big points and catches up, he will have to swallow his pride and help his teammate out as much as it'll hurt him.
Yeah, there's just so much. With 6 races we have, really, it's hard to guess what's going to happen, really. I think that's the key thing. further down the order, Nissan. I think for me, they've been a disappointment.
Yeah.
So from what we've seen this season, are you surprised by the form so far in the first 5 races, Freddie?
I from the first race, I was a bit like, wow, Ollie Rowland's getting in the mix here. He's about 4th or 5th in the majority of the race. This could be a bit more his year, because he came in season 5 as a last minute employment, and I think he got the most pole positions in that season of any driver. Nissan definitely did as a team, but they only got 1 win last year, so it's a bit. There's a bit like they're not really converting so much as they used to when Buemi was in his glory years of season 2 and 3. But I think they have really been disappointing. You'd expect them to sort of develop on their just supreme 1-lap pace to be able to then bring in the race pace, but they just sort of step back a bit comparatively to everyone else somehow. And I can't really put a finger on it. I mean, yeah, Buemi got a podium in Mexico, but that's the high point of the season for Nissan.
Yeah, I think they struggle with race pace, because I remember last year they'd had a lot of pole positions, didn't they, with Road, even though Road was a rookie. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they have that form back. And the newer teams, Porsche and Mercedes, new to season 6 of Formula E. Joe, how impressed are you, I guess, with the form? Because they seem to have come in and they seem to be right there towards the front, at least for Mercedes.
Yeah, absolutely with Mercedes. You know, Stoffel Van Dorn, it helps being a driver of his quality, starting with 2 podiums, as you mentioned. He's joint 5th with Degrassi on 38 points at the moment. He's, could well be someone who plays a major part in the championship. And Nick De Vries as well, he's, as a rookie coming in, deciding Formula E over Formula 1. Maybe that was his choice. Maybe it was the teams in F1 who decided he wasn't good enough. Who knows? But for a rookie, he's done okay. A couple of standout results, but other than that, he's been a bit average, I think. But Porsche have been, for me, a disappointment. Neil Jarney's not scored a point. Maybe we didn't expect him to. He's looking at him and Lotterer. Lotterer was always going to be the number 1, but he's not scored the points I think he should have done, despite that podium. 18 points in the first round, and he's had 4 points after that since. It's not really enough.
The pace is there for Porsche. I mean, Lotterer got super pole in Mexico, but he was just muscled out of the way by Mitch Evans and just fell away. And then I think he was disqualified actually from that race. But yeah, I think you're exactly right about Neil Jarney. It's just he's a really competent and capable driver. He's just not clicked in Formula E. So I don't really know what to say about that. And the fact that the rumblings are already there for his replacement in Pascal Wehrlein is telling. I think there's a lot to say for Mercedes having had their HWA guys last year. They've come in, and Van Dorn's really been able to capitalise on having had a year in Formula E as a sort of, VIP guest, and he's now there as a full-on contender, I think. And I think De Vries actually, I think he's done all right to match that, personally.
And Van Dorn, he obviously got beaten quite heavily by Fernando Alonso this final season in F1. The way he's bounced back in Formula E, especially this season, has been quite incredible, really. And yeah, how do you think? How much of an effect do you think his F1 career had, and the way he's been able to bounce back in Formula E?
I think it's the fact he's gone to another works team in Mercedes. It's a big organisation. Obviously, he's working closely with the F1 side as well. I think even though he's racing Formula E, and he has been the 2 years, I think he's still got his eyes on there might be a seat opening, perhaps at Williams in a couple of years' time. Maybe there's a role for him there, and I'm sure he'll want to go back to F1. So I think if you could ask any driver, they would rather be in F1 than Formula E. I think, Formula E is great, but you're not racing against the best in the fastest cars with the biggest crowd watching you. So I think he would prefer to be there. But touching on, Freddie said Nissan were sort of a disappointment of the season, but they're in the team's championship. They're 4th, above Mercedes, above Audi, above Virgin. They're doing all right, but they haven't set the world alight like some others have.
That's an interesting thing you said there, because I have the feeling that Verne, he had the chance to go back to F1 a couple of years ago, didn't he? But he didn't take it. So I don't know. I think some drivers, a bit like Van Dorn, maybe they still have one eye on F1, but I think some are quite happy with Formula E, which says a lot about how much it's grown in the last few years.
I think Jev was very open about it in the And We Go Green Formula E advert film. And he seemed, I mean, he was still a bit candid and still a bit coy about it. But yeah, they seemed to heavily imply that he got an offer to go to Toro Rosso, I think, in a similar way to what they did with Brendan Hartley, give him another shot. But he's so happy in Formula E, Jev. His mental state is so much better than it was when he was in Formula One. And he's come on leaps and bounds in his self. And I think you're right. Formula E has given that opportunity to a few more drivers of a sort of, a place to be rather than just, making up the numbers that they had in Formula One.
I've got a question for you both. Would you rather be an F1 driver but in the midfield or towards the back, or be a Formula E driver but contend for wins and maybe the championship? Joe?
Oh, why do you have to throw it to me first? Honestly, I would still rather be an F1 right now.
For the money.
Partly. Yeah. We're all students after all. We need every penny we can get.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. The racing in the midfield. I know you won't be standing on the podium all that often unless you Toro Rosso in a rain-affected race or something. But it's the excitement of the racing. It's so close that you have to do the perfect lap to get the position you warrant.
Yeah, Freddie?
Yeah, F1 midfield. Come on.
I would go with, depending on how big the difference is in the money, I will admit that is a fact.
For when it happens, yeah.
Yeah. Formula E, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm edging towards Formula E just because I feel it's on an upward trend and it's growing, whereas F1 F1's growing as well in a way, but not as much. So I don't know. It's an interest. People always like to compare Formula One and Formula E, so it's an interesting thing, really.
How about if we say you could go to Formula E or IndyCar?
Formula E.
Formula E, but the
Indy
500.
Yeah, but I'd go IndyCar for the 500.
Oh, I'll do.
500 is much better than in Monaco will ever be.
Yeah, nice hotel.
And if you do win the Indy 500, not only do you get some nice milk, the glory that comes with that as well.
Big
I would
trophy.
say it's bigger. Yeah, it's bigger than the
Felipe Massa.
Yeah, Massa. Well, Massa hasn't been doing. Massa's been very disappointed as well this season.
Yes, he has.
It doesn't help with the old stereotype that it's just for retired F1 drivers, really. Yeah. Well, I guess it does help because he's been beaten by so many drivers. It kind of suggests that, how do you say, because Massa's being beaten,
the caliber of Formula E is exceptional.
Yeah, and it has grown a lot, the field. If you compare it to season one and the field now, I'd say one of the strongest things is that the field has grown so much.
Yeah. It's what, a 24 car strong grid, and it's got Formula 2 champions, GP2 champions, Le Mans winners, a Formula 1 vice champion in Massa, who, yes, we're talking about, which as a stat is great, but we're talking about how they're beating a Formula 1 vice champion. So the caliber of a Formula E field is fantastic.
Definitely. You look at Massa's teammate, Eduardo Mortara, he's 5 races, 4 points finishes. He's 30 points clear of his teammate as well.
Yeah.
And he took a win, and he took the win in Hong Kong last year, didn't he?
Did he not get the score? Oh no, Bird got
disqualified.
I thought he spun, unless that was someone else.
I think it was Roland who spun, or Lotterer spun. I can't remember that. That might have been Sanya I'm getting mixed up with.
Yeah, someone's spun.
It's been a while.
I can't remember.
Yeah, but Mortara's a point ahead of John Verne in the championship, and I don't think you'd rule Verne out just yet.
That's true.
Because you can't really rule Mortara out either.
Let's put a bet on Mortara for the championship. Venturi getting the championship would not be what we'd have thought at all at any point, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the great things that a team like Venturi can fight with the big manufacturers. That's another thing I love about Formula E. But yeah, do we all think the championship will go down to the last race? Are we willing to place a bet on that, or do you think someone like Da Costa or Evans might run away with it?
I think Joe mentioned it earlier that these are actually quite big gaps in the championship table for Formula E, and there is the potential for someone to run away with it. And I think, I don't know. It's just completely off the wall to say yes and no. Like, yes, we've got Da Costa with an 11-point gap to Evans, and then pretty much a 20-point gap to third place Sims, I think. And so he could just, if he wins another race and his rivals are sort of out of it because of the Super Pole, how that works, then that could leapfrog him well clear. But then also if there's a poor result for him, then it could swallow him up. So it really depends on what happens to Da Costa, despite none of us saying he'll win the title.
I think for my prediction to go right, I think it does have to go down to the last race. I don't see how Gunter can be 26 or whatever points clear going into that final race. But what we perhaps overlooked with Da Costa is his last 3 finishes have been 2 seconds and a first.
Yeah.
And that, maybe this big break will stop the momentum that he had. But if he picks up with another podium, I'm not sure anyone will beat him.
I think he's definitely favourite. I'd have to say. Yeah, I don't know why none of us have picked him. It sounds silly now. Yeah,
we should all pick Edo Mortara.
But yeah, that's the great thing about Formula E. I guess there's the top 10 can all win it really. But
maybe Neo have found something, and Oliver Turvey will through to the title.
Maybe
that's a question. Do we think Neo will get any points? Because obviously Oliver Turvey was disqualified from his points in Saudi Arabia. The only points that Neo got close to. Do you think they'll get on the score sheet?
I think every team. I'm going to say every team is going to score points. It's going to be mad, and every team is going to score points. That's my bold prediction.
I think they might look their way into a couple if there's enough problems for other people, especially reliability-wise. And we know that a Formula E race doesn't go without a little bit of wheel banging here and there.
Yeah.
So I think they will get a couple, but I can't see them overtaking Dragon, for example, above them.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be at least one crazy race, if not more. So, yeah, it's just going to be
6.
Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah. Is there any final thoughts before we finish things off to say on what we think is going to happen, or how excited you are, maybe, Freddie?
Oh, I'm so excited. Honestly, this championship just gives so much, and you get so much competition, you get so much racing and so much chaos that I've been waiting for this to come back, and now we've got it all at once, and I cannot wait. Wednesday can't come soon enough.
Like a kid at Christmas, Joe.
Yeah, I echo that. I'm quite excited for a race to be happening on a Wednesday for a change. We're usually planning Saturdays and Sundays down to the second, but now we've finally got some good Wednesday night telly.
Yeah, it's going to be like a world. For me, it feels like a football or rugby World Cup, just all compact all at the same location. But yeah, it's going to be great. We did a podcast yesterday, didn't we, Freddie? Where can our viewers or listeners find that?
They can find it on our YouTube channel, Winging It Podcast. We've got our Twitter page, Winging It F1, where you can get the links to our Acast website, and you can also find all our podcasts on Spotify and iTunes.
Yeah, so thanks for listening, I guess. Thanks for Joe for his first appearance on the show. Thanks to Freddie. As always, we'll see you later in the week to preview the Silverstone thing that's going on again. And we'll be back next week as well for another F1 podcast. And we might do another Formula E podcast in the future.
I think so.
We'll see you for that.
Cheerio.